Are you well? Because you're looking well. It's wrap up time already. Can we believe it's April? Probably, but it still feels a bit weird to say. I'm gonna run through what I read in March. My name is Aisling and welcome to my channel. So I managed to finish 7 books. 7 in March. I'm not going to say that I read 7 books in March because I definitely only finished some of them in March. Some of them have been going for a bit of a while. You'll understand when I start chatting about them. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read in March, I actually finished it on the 1st of March. So technically I read most of it in February, but never mind. We'll just say that I read it in March because I did. So I read it for my library book club. It's called The Lincoln Highway and it's by Amor Towles. I read his book The Gentleman in Moscow a few years ago. I can't remember much about it, but I remember that I absolutely loved it. I got loads from it. So I naturally said that I would buy this lovely fella, this lovely chunk, when it was published, and it has sat on my shelf ever since because I'm good at buying books and not reading them. We're working on that, okay? So this book I read for my library book club. Probably would have sat on my shelf for much longer, but I'm really glad that I read it. So we follow Emmett Watson. He is basically coming out of like a home for kind of wayward boys, or like a rehab. Basically he's committed a crime and he's sent to this kind of place for juveniles, and so he's let out because his dad dies and his mum has been absent since he was a little boy. So he comes home a little bit early to look after his little brother Billy. So his dad was a farmer and basically ran it into the ground. They're really in debt, so they have to sell the farm. So the boys decide they're going to go on a lovely road trip in Emmett's car to San Francisco. Well, that's not quite what happens, but they do start out. And it's a book that I found really frustrating in the beginning because what we're told we're gonna do and what we're believing is gonna happen, that gets switched around a little bit. So it turns out a couple of boys have followed Emmett and want to go to New York. They have a little bit of trouble getting to where they need to go, shall we say. I just threw caution to the wind with this book. I knew that some of it was completely ridiculous. I knew that, you know, little Billy, who was supposed to be, I think, like 7 or 8, he was wise beyond his years. There's so much coincidence in this book. There's so much serendipity in this book. There's so much pure, like, just madness. But, oh my word, it's like a little book about, like, boys gone wild. I just loved it. It was so good. The characters were just so lovely. I just allowed myself to get caught up in it. I felt like I kind of felt when I was reading like an adventure book when I was really little. I just really got swept away with it. Once I got over my initial frustrations of, wait now, why aren't we doing what we were told we would be doing? But honestly, like, I loved this. I gave a very rare 5 stars, and I gave this one 5 stars. I wasn't completely enamored with the ending, but I didn't hate it either. I know the ending is a little bit controversial with this one, but I would 100% recommend it. So that was number 1. And number 2 then, we're getting straight into it. It's Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. I read one other Moshfegh book. It was My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I wasn't into it. Didn't really like it. I think maybe it was more to do with like the main character and kind of her privilege and yada yada, but we're not here to talk My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I know that a lot of people are really mad about Moshfegh, so I was like, hey, I see a lovely hardback edition of Eileen in my local secondhand bookshop and it's only €2, so we're gonna give it a go. So this is Moshfegh's first published novel. I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I was a little bit worried about it. So we follow our main character Eileen, and she lives in a little town in a house with her dad. Her mum passed away a few years prior and she works in a prison. Her dad is a retired prison guard. Her dad is a prick. Just a bona fide prick. He's not very nice. He's really unkind to her. Eileen, she may be a very, very flawed woman, but poor Eileen never had a hope. So they live in this house and it's completely just disgusting. They don't really clean it. Her dad's an alcoholic. He's horrible to her. She doesn't have any friends. She's a little bit odd. She goes to work. She's obsessed with this one guy that works and she just has these fantasies there. One thing I loved about Eileen is that, you know, it had me thinking, is this normal? Do other people think about these things too? She has some pretty disgusting thoughts and we get to hear about them and read about them, and Moshfegh's modus operandi is to make people squirm. I've heard Lapvona is really uncomfortable. So I didn't really know what to make about Eileen. I actually like underlined and tabbed quite a bit of it. I really enjoyed some of it. Eileen's tottering along, obsessed with this other prison guard, and then this lady, this counsellor, comes to work in the prison that she's working in, and Eileen sees the opportunity to make a friend with somebody who she perceives as particularly well put together and glamorous. And this particular lady pulls Eileen into a crime, and Eileen gets a bit wrapped up in that. And that is not a spoiler, I believe it is in the blurb. If you like flawed main characters, if you like a bit of weird, if you like a bit of where is this going, I actually would recommend this book. I much preferred it to My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I think it has saved Moshfegh for me. I think I would read more of her books. I'm quite intrigued by Lapvona, but I don't think I'm ready to go there just yet. Okay, book number 3 that I read, so started and finished in March, was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I've been seeing this a lot on social media, on like BookTube, on Bookstagram, on BookTok. I believe it is a series, and I think one of the books in the series was published recently. Anyway, so we follow a girl named Jude. Essentially, Jude lives with her parents and her 2 sisters, and something happens in their life where they end up being taken by this god to this place full of magical beings. Jude is not magical, so she's really struggling to survive. She's an outcast. She's really not accepted within that community, and it's kind of a book again about an outsider. I wanted to love this book, right? But just something about it, I don't know. So basically Jude is kind of drawn into this like political thing by this prince who is in line to be king, and she gets a job from this guy to kind of help him out and whatever, and she gets all tied and tangled up into this political intrigue, and it's about kind of what happens there. There's a little bit of queer representation in here, which I did enjoy. I always enjoy a bit of that. I just don't know, it kind of fell a little bit flat for me, but I would continue with the series. I think I am classic for reading the first book in a series and then just kind of being like, oh, I'll read the next one sometime, and completely forgetting about what the book is about, and then being like, oh well, I kind of probably have to reread the first book before I go on to the second book. So then I just end up at a bit of a stalemate, and I'm just bad at reading series, even though I really want to be good at it because some series are so good. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars in the end. I didn't think it was terrible, and I will continue with the series, but maybe probably I'm not going to prioritize it. The next book I have spoken about. I spoke about it in, was it my last video? No, it wasn't, because my last video I spoke about poetry, which you can watch if you would like to do so too. But it was the video before that. It was a vlog. So I read Claire Keegan's Foster. If you want to know one thing about me, is that I am obsessed with Claire Keegan. I believe her writing is perfectly on point. There's not a word spared. She writes the kind of books that feel like they're pretty much about nothing, but are really emotional and really about just kind of real life, just the average everyday, the ins and outs of the human psyche. Just her writing is just, I feel like when you read her works you don't realize that you're reading, because the writing is so good. There's nothing superfluous about it. It just is what it is. She just says what's happening, and I feel like there is surely a craft in not needing so many words. So Foster is about a girl who is sent to live with a family that she doesn't know over a summer while her mother is having a baby. Why did they send her away when she has other sisters, other siblings? Why couldn't they send them away? But anyway, it's just about that summer that this little girl has. This book is the book that On Colleen Keown, or The Quiet Girl, was based on, which was nominated for Best International Picture for the Oscars. It didn't win, but it was a beautiful film as well, so definitely worth the watch. Speaking of Claire Keegan and films, I don't believe that I've mentioned that I live in the town where Small Things Like These was set, and Cillian Murphy of super famous actor fame is currently swanning around my teeny tiny little town. They're shooting the film here. I did try to get a little bit of footage for you guys, but the crowds are just a bit mad, so we don't think that's going to be happening. But definitely read Foster, definitely read some Claire Keegan. She's very good at what she does. So the next book is quite exciting. I've been reading this one since January 1st of this year, and I finished it, I believe, in and around the 20th, 21st of March. I know I read it, but I feel like I can't believe that I read it. Potentially because I can't remember a lot of it. Potentially because I didn't really know what was going on sometimes. I feel like I could read it again and be like, oh, I never read this book before. But I definitely did. I promise you I did. I read the whole thing. The whole thing. Look at this chunk. Look at this chunk. Lads, I read War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I feel mad saying that. Like, I feel like it makes somebody sound like super intellectual when they say that they read War and Peace. Let me tell you, I'm a bit of an idiot sometimes, and that's fine. I know who I am, I accept that. I honestly never really thought that I could read War and Peace. Like, look at this thing. It's one of these old Russian novels that is incredibly philosophical. I tell you lads, Leo Tolstoy had a lot of words. He wrote a lot of words, right? And then in the end there's like a 100-page epilogue, as if he didn't have enough words, but he wants to talk some more about this book. I believe it took him about 5 years to write. I'm surprised it didn't take me that long to read. Sometimes it felt like it did. Would I recommend it? Could I say that it's been worth the journey, been worth the toil, been worth the hardship? I don't know. I don't know. Some of it I adored. So we follow a number of different families and kind of how the Napoleonic Wars affected them. You know, a lot of their sons, their dads were sent off to war or willingly went off to war to defend Russia against the French. So it's about the war, and there's a lot of like war campaign going on in it. But there's also a lot about friends and family and kind of their interactions with each other and what's going on, and I really enjoyed a lot of that part. I love in these classic novels they meet somebody for the first time and they're like, I'm in love with him. I'm glad things have changed, because I feel like I have definitely in the past been super infatuated and had very strong feelings about somebody I didn't know very well, and now have strong feelings in the opposite sense, in that I hate them. I'm glad things, you know, we don't get married after, you know, meeting somebody a few times. Not anymore anyway. Anyway, I digress. Would I recommend War and Peace? I don't know. I actually don't know. I wouldn't read it again. I read it the once. I don't remember an awful lot of it. I really loved some of it. I really was swept away. I got so much from a lot of kind of Tolstoy's philosophical talk. I feel like it was a little bit long. Is that a really obvious thing to say about a really long book such as War and Peace? I don't know. I know that there are people out there that read this book, you know, once a year, absolutely love it. Maybe the philosophy, maybe the metaphor went a little bit over my head. Maybe I would have been better to kind of studied it in class or something, because some of it I just felt contextually I didn't know kind of what was going on. I felt like I needed a bit more, but I got through it. It took me 2.5 months. The last third of it was a little bit of a push for me. I just had to really push hard to get through, because it wasn't the kind of book that maybe encouraged me to pick it back up once I had put it back down, and I've been reading other books in the meantime as well. So, but I don't know, if you like really long books, which I do, a book where you can kind of really get into the nitty-gritty of your characters, which I do, if you like a book that has almost 600 characters, can't say that I do now, then this book might be for you. It's not as awful to read as I thought it might be, but it was a bit of a slog. But I read it, lads. I read War and Peace. What the hell? 2 more books to go. The next book is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Ogawa. I cannot think of the author's first name. Yoko Ogawa, and it was translated from Japanese by Stephen Snyder. I really liked this book as well. Also, look at these covers. I was gifted a lot of these Japanese editions. What are they called? Vintage Japan. Something along those lines anyway. But my partner gifted me like all of these Japanese classics in these editions, and they're absolutely bloody beautiful. The paper that the covers are printed on is beautiful as well. It feels really nice. It feels vintage, which fair play to the publishers. So in this book we follow a housekeeper who is tasked with looking after an ex-math professor. The reason he's an ex-math professor was he was involved in an accident, and the accident left him with some memory problems. So his memory lasts for 80 minutes, no longer. So every day she arrives at the door, our housekeeper, and she has to reintroduce herself. He asks her the same questions every day, but somehow they forge this relationship. There's so much about maths in here. I was not a maths person, have never been a maths person. I just logic. We're all about the vibes over here. I expected a lot of maths in this book and I wasn't disappointed, but what I didn't expect was a lot of baseball. There was quite a lot of baseball, but I didn't mind because it was written beautifully. The housekeeper struggled a little bit initially to connect with the professor, but once he found out that she had a son, he started making sure that he came to the house as well every day so that he wouldn't be left at home on his own waiting on his mom while she was caring for the professor. And the 3 of them forged this really lovely relationship in spite of the professor's difficulties with memory. They really connect over baseball and they really connect over maths as well. It's the kind of book that not much happens in, and it feels very sparse. There's not a lot of kind of outsiderness. It's just essentially mostly the 3 main characters, and then the professor's sister-in-law, you know, gets involved here and there as well. But I would definitely recommend this book. I think I gave it 4 stars in the end. I thought I was on track for 5 star, but I don't know, I didn't get that punch that I wanted. But I would absolutely recommend this book 100%. And book number 7 needs absolutely zero introduction. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So this book has been sitting on my shelf a while. I love the idea of dark academia, and sometimes I feel like maybe I don't actually like dark academia. No, I do though, I really do. So I'd put this book off for a little while because it was on my shelf, and of course I wasn't going to read it if it was already on my shelf. But I was in the mood for it in March, so I decided to pick it up. So we follow Alex Stern, or Galaxy Stern. Alex short for Galaxy. God, my non-existent kids are so glad that I'm never going to have kids, because they would have some ridiculous name just like Galaxy Stern. But anyway, this book is about Alex Stern, and she is a student at Yale, and the reason that she's a student at Yale is not because she has good grades and she wants to go to college. Oh no, she was recruited by Leith House, I believe that's how you pronounce it, but because she can see greys. Greys are essentially like ghosts. Most people cannot see greys, but for some reason Alex has been able to see greys since she was a kid. So just dead people walking around the street. Sounds like right fun. The house that recruited Alex was set up to kind of keep an eye on these other kind of old societies in Yale. A bit of magic going on, really enjoyed that. So Alex has this guy who takes her under his wing. That's his job, he doesn't do it for the fun of it. He's not exactly excited about it. Normally he would get to pick this particular person, but Alex was chosen because of her gift. This guy's name is Darlington, and he kind of brings her into this society, kind of teaches her the ropes, and we learn early enough that Darlington goes missing, and then there's a murder. And Alex is a bit too new for all this stuff. She doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't want to be there. But she has a feeling that this murder case is not as easy to solve as the police believe it to be. So Alex has a large part in figuring out why this girl died, who killed her, what happened. And she unearths a lot of secrets along the way. So I really enjoyed this. It moved quite quickly. I feel like in the beginning I was a bit like, what's going on? I felt like maybe it was a little bit slow to start, but once you get into it, it moves. There are some great characters in it. I don't know that anybody in it is 100% likable, and I kind of like that about a story, because we're all flawed, we're all dopes, like we all make stupid decisions, we're all cruel to ourselves and to the people that we love and the people around us. So I just enjoy that in a book because it's the truth, unfortunately. I believe that I would recommend this, and I will go on to read Hellbent, but again, I'm not in a hurry because I'm not really a series gal. I try my best, I swear. I don't really. I just like to read. Look, we're all about the vibes over here. I wouldn't say that Leigh Bardugo is like a favourite author or anything, but then when I look at my shelf, I'm like, I read about 5 of her books in the past year or so. I believe her to be a really readable author. I actually started watching the 2nd season of Shadow and Bone last night, and I will continue with that. I haven't heard the best reviews, but never mind. I'm going to watch it anyway. Make my own opinions. That's a thing, right? Sorry, I'm sitting really awkward because my back's killing me the way I'm sitting. I literally do not help myself. I know it's going to happen and I just do the thing anyway. Sit up straight, Aisling. Stop torturing your body. 9th house, would recommend. Hellbent, I'm looking forward to. Cat, meowing loudly. So, that's my wrap up. My 7 books. My Lincoln Highway, my Eileen, my Cruel Prince, my War and Peace. Oh, Foster's in there too, it's just so small I didn't really see it. The Professor and the Housekeeper, and the 9th house. So I had a pretty good reading month, and I'm really relieved and happy to be over War and Peace. What have you been reading? What have you been up to? How are you feeling? How's your man? Are you well? I'm really delighted to be here. I'm so happy that you watched this video. I'm sorry if I babbled far too much, but that's who I am. If you like that kind of thing, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be talking to you soon. Mind yourself. Bye bye.